Good morning. It is Tuesday, the 23rd of August. We come back and we are looking at the book of Job again, this incredible piece of literature, almost at genius level, really, when you come to explore it. Job 6, verses 1 to 23. And then we pick up from the book of Acts, chapter 9, verses 32 to the end. And remember, when we spoke and introduced the book of Job on Friday, we spoke about how this book explores the element of suffering and how do we explain suffering when we believe in a God who is absolutely God, all-powerful, a God who is absolutely just and righteous, who cannot do anything wrong. And why then do we as human beings suffer? If this God is God and all-powerful, and if he cannot permit injustice to take place, then why do we suffer? And we said that we had to understand that there was, and this is a particularly monotheistic and it's obviously then Israelite, Hebrew understanding, that it's not just this binary relationship between us and God. So that if something goes wrong in our lives and we know that we're innocent, then actually the fault all lies with God. And some other logical conclusion might be, from a monotheistic point of view, is the belief that God cannot be anything but God, all-powerful and all-knowing, and God cannot be anything but godly. He is always right and therefore always stands for justice. And so therefore, if something happens in our lives, it is because we are at fault. There is some secret sin in our life. And so in the more monotheistic or Hebrew world, that was the understanding. Something happens in your life, it's because you must have done something wrong and you've just not told anyone. From a more atheistic point of view, it must be either our fault or God's fault, even to the point of denying God, the godliness of God. But the book of Job introduces another way of looking at this, and that is to understand that there is a third power operating in the world. There is the power that is God. There is the power that is ourselves, because we have free will and can make decisions, and we will reap either the consequence or the reward of those decisions. But the Hebrew introduces the belief that there is a third power, Satan, the accuser. And the book of Job shows that it is ultimately Satan. It begins by talking about, and God boasting about this righteous man, Job, and Satan, who immediately, true to his name, says, no, but that cannot be true, because Job is actually evil intent in all that he's doing. He's only giving the appearance of righteousness because he wants to impress you. Take away your power and your benign sovereignty over his life, says Satan to God, and he will curse you, which is seen as being the ultimate sin. And so as the story unfolds, God, trusting perhaps in his understanding of who Job is, permits Satan within conditions, certain parameters, to begin to tempt and make Job's life miserable. And you can read the book to find out for yourself just how miserable Job's life is. And you see in the writing of Job just how Job struggles, knowing that he is innocent and yet knowing too that he is suffering. His three friends come to him and they follow the more old-fashioned belief. Job, you must have done something wrong. That's why you are suffering. Confess. Think about it, pray about it, find out what is wrong and confess. His wife is saying, curse God and die, and then you won't have this suffering anymore. And Job, true to his the belief God has in him, remains true. He suffers. His spirit cries out in despair, God, why are you doing this to me? But he remains true. And at the end, and we'll get to this point, God reveals that ultimately the struggle is not just between God and humankind. It's this titanic struggle between God, who is good, and the devil, who is evil. And the foregone conclusion of that struggle is known. God is going to win, hands down. But in the meantime, as human beings, we are caught up in the midst of this conflict. And sometimes as innocent bystanders, we suffer the consequences of that struggle. So what's happening in your life? Are you struggling? Be a bit honest. If there is anything you've done wrong, confess before God. If you know there's nothing, don't jump up and down with too much alacrity. Accept that somehow this is the spiritual life that we live, that there is a Satan, a roaring lion, who is going around endeavoring to devour us and who is accusing us before God. And sometimes we are caught up in the fray, utterly innocent, but caught up in the fray nevertheless. And whatever we do, have faith in God, remain faithful in God, and trust to his ultimate sovereign will over your life. Folks, have a wonderful day. We'll chat again tomorrow. God bless.